The reality is I could give you a long-winded speech. I could talk at great boring length. You've already dealt extraordinarily with the details of the events of the last year. Of course, the truth is, if I had written this presentation when I was invited, it would have been very different to what I'm going to talk to you about today. The world has changed dramatically, and I am not qualified, ladies and gentlemen, to stand here in front of you and discuss this from a geopolitical standpoint. Oh, I can pontificate like anybody else. I can bore on about it inordinate length. I can tell you what I read in last week's Economist, but I'm not equipped to put it in the geopolitical. We have the Senator, we have George, we have many more people in this room who are much better equipped to do that. However, what I can do is give you what I think is some idea on the investment opportunities, the investment environment, and the totality. And I do that from a position of somebody who has sort of covered it on a daily basis. But let me be clear. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you in this room take investment decisions and make political decisions, sir. I merely question those people who do. I am your ultimate voyeur. I stand at the side, I watch, I throw bricks, I ask questions, but the only, as the Americans have this lovely phrase, the only skin in the game that I have is myself. So I want to do it in a classical SWOT format. The strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Let's start, of course, with a piece of paper that won't stay where it's supposed to be. We start, of course, with the strengths. We're talking about the Silk Road. Well, the Silk Road's greatest strength, of course, was its just sheer size. It's sheer, you know, even the word size doesn't make it clear. It's that, if you really want to give an idea, it's the from one side to the other. The sheer vastness of it, from east to west, west to east. Over 7 centuries ago, it was Marco Polo, the world's most famous Venetian, who returned after the long, grueling trip to China. He brought back with him the grandson of Genghis Khan, the name Kublai Khan. And Kublai Khan's vast empire was roughly one-fifth of the entire land inhabited in the world. It stretched from where we are now, out the way to the Black Sea and the Pacific, from Siberia to present-day Afghanistan. Now, in those days, as you can imagine, travel was predictably difficult. You didn't just turn up at an airport like I do, and you just looked to see where you were going to go and hope the plane ran on time. No, it was by mule, it was by caravan, it was by horse, it was by camel, or you went by boat. Now, today, that is pretty much the same. The mule is now the train, the boat is still the boat, at least it was. Add in the plane, and maybe add in a bit of digital video technology. But the key point remains the same, the size and scale of this area. And look at the countries that we're now talking about, and you start to see the size and scale of this so-called New Silk Road. And at this point, I often think it's best just to leave the speech behind. If you look at the countries that are involved and you consider the mechanisms of how they're all talking about a new Silk Road. From Romania, I think we took liberty with alphabeticals and we decided to put my host at the top, obviously. There are many countries in there, of course, that you are now looking at, most of them as investment opportunities and investment potential. And as you define and you delineate what is a new Silk Road, you have to bear in mind one crucial point. Every different person has a different definition of what we're talking about. And all the major players are now creating their own individual versions of it. So you have China, for example. Now, everybody wants to be in China. Put your hand up if you don't want to be in China. Everybody wants to be in China for the investment opportunities there, the largest in the country, more than $1 billion. Alibaba floats on the New York Stock Exchange. The initial share price, of course, even the float price had to be raised. The float was 68, 69, goes up to 93, 38% rise in a day. And Jack Ma is fated at the New York Stock Exchange. This is a company that we can't, here at CNN, we had to have emails telling us how to describe Alibaba, because we all wanted to call it either Yahoo or eBay. We had people who wanted to say it's the China Google. And then finally, a senior director sent a note saying, no, Alibaba is everything. It's all of them. But the point I'm making, China wants a new Silk Road initiative, or wants a new Silk Road. It wants a maritime Silk Road. The United States wants a Silk Road. Senator Clinton, Hillary Clinton, President Clinton, she wants a new Silk Road in 2011 with her new initiative. Russia wants a new Silk Road. Everybody wants a new Silk Road. But what do they want when they say we want a new Silk Road? What they want, ladies and gentlemen, let me call, I'm English, as you know, I'm British, let me call a spade a bloody shovel, as we say where I come from. What they want are contracts. Every company wants to get their nose in the trough. Everybody wants to do business in these countries. And that's probably the best way to look at the new Silk Road. Because the moment you start looking at this as some grand design, the moment you start trying to put an initiative together, you start trying to put an architecture over it, you end up in disaster. You end up in geopolitical crisis, you end up in chaos, and nothing gets done. The problem, of course, I'm going to argue against myself, which is always the best way, because when you argue against yourself, you can answer yourself. The problem is, if you don't have the architecture, what are you left with? You are left with a variety of individual contracts, bilateral agreements, and you're not left with a roadmap for what effectively is the Silk Road. But this shows just, this is from the Silk Road group, and there were 1,001 maps that we could have picked up. We just chose this one. I mean, choose which route you'd like, frankly. Choose which one you want. It doesn't matter which way you go. They all seem to end the same way. Because the biggest weakness in my SWOT of this is its complexity. Everybody wants to do business in these countries, but look at the complexity of getting around it. Different legal systems. Some of them barely have legal systems. Some of them have human rights abuses that would do this building proud. Others have institutions in name only. Notice I'm not mentioning anybody. I do want to get out of here in one piece. And then, of course, you have the element of corruption and difficulty of doing business in these places. But that should not obscure the opportunity that exists. That complexity that I'm talking about, those different dialects, those many different distributive networks, they are opportunities as much as they are weaknesses when turned to the right advantage. The Silk Road was never a safe place to do business. It really wasn't. There were bandits, cutthroat killers, there were rapists, there were just about every sort of villain that you're likely to meet on that road today. And just as much as the old Silk Road had, I mean, put it this way, Genghis Khan had a rather nice way of dealing with anybody who didn't agree with him. He went out and just massacred, and suddenly everybody agreed with him. There are some players on the Silk Road that would like to do the same thing. And some of them have even tried to do it in many different ways. The cultural and legal possibilities on this Silk Road are as difficult as anything. But however, what I really want to talk to you about today, of course, is the threats that are on the Silk Road. And there, you really don't need to look too far, because wherever you look, they are big. We could have made that even bigger, but that will get bigger, I assure you. Those threats will get bigger, because the biggest threat at the moment, I want to just go through all of this. Follow me with the map, if you will. Let's go from east to west. China at the moment. China at the moment, growing. You all want to be there. Everybody wants to do business. Alibaba. Magnificent. But should we be worried when a Chinese official says there will be unimaginable consequences if the protest movement in Hong Kong doesn't go away? Should we be worried in China when the question of, you saw the tear gas that was used in Asia's principal financial, or Southeast Asia's principal financial district? You want to talk about threats? You want to talk about threats? Just consider what could happen in that part of the world. And then as you move west, you've got countries like Uzbekistan, which Human Rights Watch recently brought out a report extolling the most draconian and disgraceful human rights abuses. And you could arguably throw a few other countries in there as well that might have the same sort of abuses as well. You've got countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Now look, I am not denying for one moment, ladies and gentlemen, that all these countries offer opportunities. But they also, in many cases, offer the same opportunities as pigs in the trough. Get your nose in and fill your boots, as they used to say. There are plenty of contracts in those parts of the world for those who want to do business. But you have to decide, what are the threats that go with it? What are the risks to your wealth as you do it? Or are you just going to take the hindmost like the original travelers did on the original Silk Road? And then we move further west, or come southwest. Iran, move over past Russia. Well, let's take Russia for a moment. We'll get to Ukraine at the end. Let's take Russia. The recent arrest, or the house arrest, of the oligarch, who's now sitting at home wondering whether he'll be the next Khodorkovsky, and wondering why he's being arrested in such a fashion. Is it a message from President Putin to the oligarchs to stay on board while he finishes whatever he intends to finish in Ukraine? Or did this oligarch, Yachevsky, did he actually do something wrong in his dealings with Rosneft? Is there something unsavory in the shareholdings? Well, I think we can probably say it may not have passed the Bank of England's litmus test of transparency, whatever deal was done. But we have to ask ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, what message was being sent when Putin, or when the authorities, decide to put another oligarch under house arrest. And so you come down to Ukraine. Oh, how could I forget? On the way, all these countries on the Silk Road with their Muslim militant fighters that are now being sent out. You have countries in that area who are now deeply concerned. Some are having crackdowns on populations because they are sending fighters to join ISIS, ISIL, or the Islamic State. And then as you come to the southwest of your famous Silk Road, you end up with, of course, the Middle East itself. You end up in those areas where the fighting, where the US is now putting together a coalition, another coalition of the willing, or a coalition. And maybe this coalition is more willing because there is a greater understanding of the threat that's coming. And that, of course, is why it's so dangerous at the moment. And finally, of course, you have the Ukraine situation. I am not going to stand in front of you and make too many comments about Ukraine. You know this better than I do. You're living it. You're here. It's there. It's on your doorstep. So my final thought to you is this. Yes, the opportunities are vast on the Silk Road. Yes, the risks are vast on the Silk Road. Yes, the Silk Road does not exist. Senator, I hate to disappoint you. Forgive me, pouring rain on your parade. It doesn't exist. It's a fiction. It's something put together by clever marketing, designed to somehow create a brand. What the Silk Road is an entire highway of opportunity, of potential, of risk, of chance, and a chance for you to show morality in deciding how you're going to do business along it and deal with the risks that I know some of the people here are much more qualified than myself. Let me leave you with one final thought before we move into a discussion part. It was with some real shock that I was reminded this morning of the last time I was in Romania. I actually had forgotten I'd been to Romania. You might ask, how's that possible? It happens. You know, the old American movie, if today's Tuesday, this must be Belgium. The last time I was in Romania was to build a house with Habitat for Humanity. I was doing a program, and I went out there and I helped them build this house. And a television reporter this morning said to me, Richard, do you have a message for the family of that house where you built, or that you were building? And I thought about it, and I thought, oh, that's clever. I wish I'd thought of that as a question. And then I thought, yes, I do have a message for that person. Because the other thing that everybody's asked me since I've been here is, what do you think of this building? Everybody asks me, what do you think of this building? And I'm walking around and I'm taking pictures of it. And it's very nice. It's very big. It's very expensive. Second largest building after the Pentagon. How many times have we been told that? I'm sorry, my dear. It's the second largest, biggest building after your headquarters. Can you live with that? You're not feeling too inferior. Well, I suppose not yours is still the largest. But she asked me, so, and I've answered this several times. The truth is, this building needs to be celebrated for the purpose for which it is now being used, rather than decried for the purpose of which it was built. Can there be any greater testament to what Romania has done. And I'm so glad to be here because I am still old-fashioned at age 52. I use a fountain pen. And I'm told that the fountain pen was invented in this country. Maybe the original manufacturer still isn't around. I suspect not. If anybody can get me a fountain pen from then, be delighted. This insulin, I mean, the list is long of what's come from Romania. But what it's also given the people of this country is this building, which started off as a grotesque monument to grandiosity and corruption and a perversion of values, but which has ended up as albeit an expensive token, an expensive monument to democracy in this country. Young democracy, still feeling its way, no doubt about it. So I leave you with this message from this magnificent room, which I adore. I adore this building. I think this is a tremendous... Could you imagine what sort of a party you could have in this building? I mean, you know, you want a wedding, you have it in this building, and then try and find the guests the following morning. You'll probably find some interesting relics somewhere lying on. And apparently it's as far down as it is up. But what's down, they won't let you go and see. It's all secret, I'm told. I leave you with this thought. You're going to do business on the Silk Road. The opportunities are there on the Silk Road. But just as they did originally, and as we have learned since the beginning of this year, none of us could have foreseen on December the 31st what the world looks like today. I know that sounds trite, but we could not have foreseen ISIS, Ukraine, Ebola. Half the United States is closed down, or it will be pretty soon, over this Ebola. One case in Dallas. Maybe more, who knows. Ladies and gentlemen, do not become obsessed by the new Silk Road. The Silk Road is a fiction. The Silk Road doesn't exist. What exists is the way you do business in every one of those countries along it. And you do wise to stop blinding yourself to some concept of grand architectures of Silk Roads and start individually thinking, is it India, is it Kazakhstan, is it this country, is it that country? Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is where your risk is. And where your risk is where your wallet gets hurt. And now I'm more than happy to discuss.